Hello and welcome back to another episode of Rabbit Hole Stories. Today we had Niko on, who's a content. How would you call it? A content. What are we?
Well, good question. He used to be a journalist. That's what he said, but he calls himself a content creator now because he does like
Content
all of
creator.
the stuff.
So I've got to remember that because that's what we are now, right?
We're influencers.
That is very unlikely. But yeah, Niko is a nice guy. He's got his own podcast going. He's got his own media outlet, I suppose, because he's set up a whole new website appealing not only now to German-speaking nations, but also English as well, just to get a broader message out there for a broader audience. So yeah, it was a nice chat. It was nice to get some hints and tips about content creation as well from him, which is always nice to get that kind of...
He basically told us, I can't remember if it's in the recording or once we stopped the recording, like your thumbnails are shit on YouTube. And we already knew this, so it was
we
the
knew
right
it and we
kicking
took
up on.
action. By the time you listen to
Exactly.
this, we've already taken action. So if you still think
For a
it's
few
shit,
weeks,
then
yeah.
well, what
Yeah.
can I say?
That's not on us.
Yeah. I'll have a word
Perfect.
with the editor of the thumbnails.
Yeah, the creative director at Rabbit Hole Stories. But Niko is a great guy.
He is.
He, as I said, used to be a journalist, so he also gave a couple of insights into the media landscape, what's been going on, why certain journalists just don't seem to get Bitcoin. Little spoiler, it doesn't seem to be all their fault. It's kind of the system they're in place. And I think a good talk about like CBDCs and the whole financial system in place. So it was a really broad chat. And we don't want to keep you wait any longer. So have fun, guys.
Let's go down this rabbit hole with Niko. Enjoy.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to Rabbit Hole Story with your regular co-host. We're not going to do the whole introduction again because we want to focus on our guest today. And we have Niko on live from Austria, my home country, one of my home countries. And I'm pretty excited to have you on, Niko.
Hi, Trail. Thanks for having me.
How
Hi,
are you,
Ian.
Niko? It's an
I'm very
absolute
well,
pleasure
thank
having you on Rabbit Hole Stories. And thank you for joining us and spending your time with us here today. How about we spend the next couple of minutes just getting to know you a bit better? If you want to tell us who you are, what you're about, and what kind of work you're doing in the space at the moment.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Niko Jilch. I'm from Vienna, Austria. I'm a finance journalist by trade. I've been working for newspapers, basically, most of my career. I've been covering all things monetary for about 12, 13 years, starting with the Euro crisis, then the debt crisis, Bitcoin on and off. We'll go into that story a bit later. Gold, of course, the ECB, the Euro, all that jazz for the last couple of years. Then I spent 2 years with a think tank where I also got more into the scientific details of monetary policy. And then afterwards, in beginning of 2022, I went freelance and I now work on my own. I have a YouTube channel that's mostly German, where I cover finance and Bitcoin. I have a podcast that's it's called Was Bitcoin bringt. It's a weekly German podcast, and I have to say it's pretty successful, thankfully, because there are many German podcasts right now, but my timing was good, and I'm the only one who does interviews in the studio, like Peter McCormick does. And it's really helpful to like sit down with people and not only I love doing it remotely, and if it's necessary, I will do it, but being able to sit down with people really, ups the quality of the conversation. And so I do the YouTube channel, I do the podcast. That's my main job basically. And, I'm also running, an English language, a newsletter, podcast, and soon YouTube channel under the name Fix the Money, fixthemoney.net. It's based on my Substack. I'm doing that together with Yael, a friend of mine, because I want to also stay in touch with the international Bitcoin community, because it's a global phenomenon and it's always cool to have people. I did a podcast with Mary from Nigeria 2 weeks ago, and last week I did a podcast with Suli from Lebanon, and next week I'm going to do. It's great. It's really great, and I think that there is still space in that market as well, because our friends in the US mostly talk to people in the US, so. So we have a chance to see and cover the rest of the world a little bit. And especially Europe, because we need to connect better. We need to connect with each other. I have no real clue what's going on in France or Spain or Italy. I mean, you meet some people on conferences, yes. And especially in Eastern Europe has big Bitcoiner scenes as well, because they have been through a lot. They understand the whole topic better than Western Europe probably does. So, and me being in Austria, so I mean, like smack in the middle of everything here. So, and it's been great. I mean, I've been meeting a lot of great people. I've been getting, very, very, good feedback from Germany and also from Austria. And it's great because I'm not, as a journalist, you're not used to getting, good feedback. You get hate mail mostly. Yeah?
Yeah, I can't remember the name of one of the famous French journalists who once said, if you get like a house warrant, house search, or bad email, that's sort of part of the job as a journalist. I don't hope someone got into your home, because you're definitely winning best background so far with all of our guests. For those on audio, go over to the YouTube channel. It looks Niko has a nice background, nice home office.
Well, I am a YouTuber. My wife still snickers when I say when people ask me and I say I'm a YouTuber, because she thinks. But then, of course, she also spends 20 hours a day on Instagram and thinks that's the most normal thing in the world. So I love YouTube. YouTube is great, and also it's like one thing that I did not expect, but that is already a big part of my job now is also public speaking. So I do conferences in German and English. Last year I've been at Bitcoin 2023 in Amsterdam. Been there on stage with Jeff Booth and Greg Foss and Prince Philip of Serbia, who's a very cool guy. And then I've been in Bulgaria and a couple of other places. But this year I could be on a Bitcoin event only in the German-speaking world. I could be at a Bitcoin event every weekend. So you have to pick and choose, but it's gonna be a great
I was just about to say, I just came from the Advancing Bitcoin like a few minutes ago. I'll do the interview now, do the backup, and then I'll go for the after party again. So as Bitcoiners, we sort of have to do it, right? We have to be at these events. But I can imagine the discussions at home if you want to be like everyone, I guess. You can't go to every Bitcoin you want, conference you want.
No, you can't. But it's a crazy world, last week or this week actually on Monday I would do an interview with Vijay Boyapati, the bullish case for Bitcoin, and then like an hour later I would do an interview with Suli in Lebanon. It's nice. Just insane, but it's a lot of fun, and you just have to be careful you don't overwork yourself. But that's true for every job. So. I enjoyed it a lot.
I mean, you're much further down the content journey than I am, and it seems like you've been very successful at doing so. And like what I've just been hearing you say, Niko, is it's so much better meeting people in person. So going to all these meetups and to the conferences and having a studio where you can actually speak face to face with these people, and quite a lot of influential people that you've spoken to as well in the space, creates this kind of wealth of knowledge that you can sort of put the signal out there for Bitcoin. So it's such a privileged position for you to be in, and I'm just wondering whether how have you learned anything new recently in the Bitcoin space speaking to all these people, or is it just kind of the same message? Is there more learning taking place constantly for you?
Yes, and that's the great thing about it. That's why I do it in this way. It's you never know. You never know. And especially talking to people from other cultures and other countries and even other continents. Let's take Mary from Nigeria, for example. I would see her. I would write and I would do a video on my German YouTube channel on the situation, the cash, inflation, Bitcoin situation in Nigeria, and then I see a thread she posts on Twitter. I immediately shoot her a DM. No, I look her up first, because one of the skills you have to develop is you have to see if somebody is suited, for an interview. And so I look her up, and she has a Twitch channel and a YouTube channel, and she's running 2 podcasts of her own. So yeah, she's suited. I sent her a DM on Twitter if she wants to do a podcast, and within 2 days we're talking about, and it's very easy to get going because we are all on a very similar point of information, right, when it comes to what's happening in the world. But then I don't know what's happening in Nigeria. So for example, I realized this when I talked to her. So she said that Nigeria is a very cash-based society, right? And that cash is very important for Nigerians to keep the country running, because and then the central banks comes and fucks up the whole cash situation, because that's what central banks do. And now it's chaos. And I said, yeah, well, Austria, funnily enough, is also a cash-based society. But the more we got into it, the more I realized the words are the same, but it doesn't mean the same thing. Austrians like to use cash because they are just used to it. But if you don't have to use cash, everybody's fine using other means, right? Nigerians are literally dependent on cash. If there's no cash, nothing happens. So there's a huge difference, obviously. You can't just sit there and say, yeah, we're the same. It doesn't work like that. So yeah, these little things you learn. And I realized this very early on, even long before I did finance journalism, when I started as a journalist while I was still at university. So you would go to university and you would have a professor there, and there's like 800 students listening to the professor, and it's very impersonal, right? But if you call any professor in the world and you say, I write for a newspaper, you have time for an interview, they'll have like 3-4 hours for you and post for pictures, because everybody wants to get into the media, and give you explain everything to you in a one-on-one situation, right? And that is a privilege, yes, absolutely. And for me, doing the podcasting, I started out podcasting in my last job before the pandemic. I had one prior podcast, and I never thought about doing it remotely. So I would always start with doing it personally, and then during the pandemic, I learned how to do it remotely. And then afterwards, now I see it as a privilege, because within the German-speaking world, if you're a Bitcoiner who maybe has a story to tell, or even has a company he wants people to know about, and I meet you at the conference, I will tell you, I invite you to the podcast. Absolutely, I want to talk to you. But if you can take the time, come to Vienna for a couple of hours. Let's do it in person, and many people will do it. I'm not at the level of others that I can invite people yet, but maybe in the future,
Do you think so? Because I think a lot of the German people, German-speaking people, sorry. Wow, I just offended probably a couple of Swiss guys you had on. That could go either or the other way. Julian Liniger, for example, was he already in Vienna, or did he come to meet you and do the talk? Because I feel like a lot of people have been in your studio and sort of came on an invite basis.
No. I mean, invite in the sense that I pay for everything.
Okay, got it.
That's what I meant. I can't because I think others are have enough budget so they can just say, okay, come here, I'll pay for the flight and the hotel, and so that I cannot do yet. It is a business. It is a business that I'm running here. It is profitable, but it's still very much a one-man show with some contractors, right? So I cannot just willy-nilly invite people. But I mean, it would be great at some point if I could do that. Julian, for example, so Imo, who you had on the show, so Imo, so he lives in Vienna, right? And then there's others, from the southern, like the Swiss and the southern German region, it's not that far, Christian Kläger from TerraHash was doing a great job. He wanted to do it in person. So if it's possible for me, I will do it in person. That's also actually why I started the English podcast. So I'm basically publishing 2 episodes a week, one in English and one in German these days. And I started it because I would meet guys like Jeff Booth and Greg Foss and Isabella Kaminska and all these people on the conferences. And I couldn't bring my cameras because that's just too much of a hassle, right? But I can record audio there. And that's the journalist in me. If I get to speak to people like this, I want to sit down and talk to them. And also, I have to say, this is crazy, but we live in a world that's we're so distracted all the time, right? That having these long form conversations with 100% focus is great for everybody involved, because you're not distracted, and it's just, for me, doing this, it gives me more energy that it takes out. So it's a net positive for the world.
Funny enough, you mentioned it. I actually just got involved in a Bitcoin think tank who's sort of getting built up and stuff. And I'm sort of partially responsible, media side, content side. And they asked me, like, we would like to do short video content formats and all of these things. I was like, yeah, we can do this. But like, I would see a podcast, because whichever Bitcoin rabbit hole you want to fall down into, whether that be mining, macroeconomics, whatever, this is probably the best way to get started. But I'm not there yet. So I'm with you 100%. We need more of these long form conversations. But I think as a human species, we're just too bad to basically keep up there or listen to something in one go for like 90 minutes instead of being.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, but if you look at it, I mean, if I go to YouTube Shorts, 99% of that is Joe Rogan.
True, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
It's so there is something there, and I think people. I also do YouTube Shorts now, so I realized this very quickly that I had to do it, but this is something I cannot do on my own. So I would I meet a very young Bitcoiner, 20-year-old guy at the Bitcoin conference in Innsbruck. He says hi. He's going to move to Vienna. I say, okay, hit me up when you're in Vienna. Let's talk. And then turns out he's already running a small YouTube channel. He can cut videos, and now he's doing this for me, right? So he would sit down because it needs to be a Bitcoin. It needs somebody who has the knowledge and the energy of to listen to all that stuff, right? So I'm very thankful that happens, because I cannot do that. I'm running a YouTube channel. I've never cut the video in my whole life. Because I'm old school, and if I do a video. So what I do, and this is like my thing now, if I do a video that's only me, I would do a one take. So if I fuck it up after 10 minutes, I have to start again. But I can do it like, I have a system where I can pause the recording. And when I start it again, it looks like I did a cut, but I never did a cut.
Very sneaky.
It's very sneaky.
So is that when you do the different camera angles then?
Yeah, exactly. So that's also why I warned you before we taped. I warned you that the Amazon guy would be coming, because I sent back the cameras and got better ones. I didn't like the picture that they were producing.
So you have like a command battle at home, I guess, then, if I imagine your workspace.
Yes, I do. I'm also I'm one of those persons who would watch like videos about
desk setups, same.
setups and desk setups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yes, I have to say I have a pretty sweet setup. It's also standing desk stuff, everything.
I've got setup envy right now. I thought I had something going on. I'm starting to evolve a little bit into having a little bit more of an aesthetic going on. But no, you've got it down, Niko. Well done.
So I maybe to turn it back to the business. Yeah, I mean I got it down because the main thing I did in year one was I got an office.
Nice.
That's why I'm not working from home for many reasons. I have kids and family, and it's just mentally it's just better to not sit at home all day. So I have an office, and that's why I can have a setup like this. If I would do this at home, it would be very dangerous with little kids there and stuff like that.
Nice. And for you, what is the biggest learning out of year one as a self-employed journalist? Because I imagine that's quite a vast difference to working for big media papers or newspapers in general.
It's really funny actually, because you are used to like. A freelance journalist in the old days would be a synonym for a taxi driver, right? And this is not. I don't mean this in a bad way. There's great taxi drivers, but I'm just saying many people who had this dream would end up not having it fulfilled, right? So I would say that besides Bitcoin itself, the whole story of what we call today content creation, or I think Facebook on Instagram calls it digital creator. I like that one. Is that's like that's the meta story of what I do. So and then there is also the connection, because with value for value and the Lightning Network and stuff like that, Bitcoin actually ties into this content creation sphere in a way that no other technology does really. So this is really fascinating, and this is one of the reasons why I'm running YouTube and the Substack and a Ghost website, because I try all these different platforms, and so freelance journalist really doesn't really cut it. I mean, it's more like a one-person media business. I'm not a freelance journalist. A freelance journalist doesn't sell advertising in their own products. I'm officially, yes, in front of the law, I'm a freelance journalist, because it has some perks here in Austria. There's less bureaucracy involved in my life. But and I think that this is really something that's going to get only bigger within the next couple of years in every sort of topic. And Bitcoin is just a perfect topic. It's just a wonderful topic because it is relevant, it is important. It's not something just a hobby. It's something that I strongly believe in. Is there for, basically to make the world a better place. And also on the audience side, it's great, because there's the people. The only like topic that you can compare it to is sports. So if Ian, are you?
I'm not actually, and I'm
I'm
the only Brit in the world that doesn't like football. But I understand your analogy. I understand where you're coming from, Niko. But the topic of Bitcoin is just like an endless rabbit hole of different diversions in that warren. And it's a conversation that can continue and continue and continue, and learning just doesn't stop taking place all the time.
And I always like to compare it to, if I have to explain it to my friends, if they ask me why are you so into Bitcoin, I can ask them the same thing, why are you a Tottenham Hotspurs fan, for example? Horrible football club. My opinion, sorry for any Tottenham fans out there.
Well, Peter McCoy.
I know. I have many discussions with him at a few conferences about this. But it's the same thing, right? What drives these people to spend money on every home match or sometimes on away games and going there and buying merch and all of these things, because there is a passion there. I would make the case Bitcoin is probably improving the world much, much more than a game of football. Again, subject to whoever is involved in whatever. But it's the same thing. We are passionate and we want to spread that and make a contribution to the legacy financial system or whatever you are involved in with Bitcoin.
And there's one more thing. It's this little esoteric theory that I have. It's the mainstream media likes to say that Bitcoin wastes energy, right? But I think it doesn't waste energy at all. The energy turns up within the Bitcoin.
Yes.
Because there is it's so easy working with Bitcoiners because they have such passion for the project that they just want to do something, because everybody knows it's going to lead somewhere. And it's just a whole different society and dynamic to be working in. And I'm just really glad that I did this, because I was almost 40. I had 2 kids. I had a very well-paid job. I could have just stayed there. And I even, in my think tank, I was even able to actually work on Bitcoin,
nice.
Right? But I didn't. I wasn't able to. But it's other stuff as well. It's not only so you have the Bitcoin, let's call it a Bitcoin megatrend, right? So you have the Bitcoin megatrend, then you have the content creation, the content economy megatrend. That is especially in German speaking world is lagging behind, obviously, behind because it's more international, just like Bitcoin. And then you have also this I don't know how to call it. It's like the inflation and the pandemic and even younger people in general, they are more conscious about their time, I guess, and they're more conscious about what we call work-life balance, but it's such a stupid word, right? So I don't want work-life balance. I want just work balance. Then my life is also in balance, right? So I and for me, I've never been one that could turn off his head about the stuff he was working on anyway. So it's better to just accept that and then build your life around that. So that's what I'm doing right now, and I have no intention of stopping.
When did you first hear about Bitcoin, Niko?
So I've gotten this question before, and I have to say I don't know. I would have to. Maybe I can go through my Gmail, and maybe I can go through my Evernote. I'm a huge Evernote user since 2009, and this also helps me a lot because I can even reference like old interviews that I did in my new work now, which is interesting. I'm working on an article about Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock. I actually interviewed him once in Vienna, and I asked him about Bitcoin back then. And I kept the recordings, so now I can go through the old recordings and compare it to what he's saying now. It's very good stuff. When did I first hear about Bitcoin? I don't know. I remember that Max Tertinek, who is the founder of Coinfinity, who is today my German channel's main sponsor, he came to Vienna, I think in 2013 or 14, to explain it to me. There must have been after I've written about it already, because I've written about Bitcoin in Die Presse, which is a very old newspaper that already, Karl Marx was a correspondent from London who wrote for Die Presse, but also Ludwig von Mises wrote for Die Presse. It's a very old, liberal newspaper. And I've heard about Bitcoin obviously before I wrote about it, so it must have been somewhere in 2010, 12 maybe. I think, because the European Central Bank had its first paper on Bitcoin, virtual currency schemes. That was also in 2012, and they had a whole paper about Bitcoin. That was actually their best paper about Bitcoin yet. Everything afterwards was shit.
Speaks volume to their work ethic.
And it compared Bitcoin to the Linden dollars from Second Life, right? And so I think 2012 would be a good guess, probably.
And when did?
And I didn't buy in, and I'm not rich.
No. So it's for me, it was like one thing hearing about Bitcoin, but then it was another thing understanding Bitcoin to the point where I was like, this is something significant, and that's when you start going down the rabbit hole. So you first heard about Bitcoin around 2012, but then obviously, as time went on, the more you heard about it, the more you understood it. What was your aha moment with Bitcoin? Is like, actually, this is something quite significant. Is that something you remember more clearly?
Yeah, because it's not that far off. But the real aha moment only came in 2020. It took me 7 years. So the thing is, I understood what it wanted to do from an economics perspective very quickly, because I was already into Austrian economics. I was already into gold. I knew about the fiat money system. I knew that inflation was a problem. I knew that central banks are not really a technology that's up to the standards that we need today. But I was very far down already the gold rabbit hole, and there is a rabbit hole there. There is also different sections within the rabbit hole. And I was very far down the gold rabbit hole, and also, if you want to call it something, there is also a central banking rabbit hole, right? Because they know about all of this stuff. They just have their ways of communicating about it, right? So this is one thing, and the second thing that that the flip side of being a journalist, especially a daily journalist, is that you always have to cover what's hot right now. So when Bitcoin goes to 700 euros, 800 euros, I can write an article about it. But then 2 weeks later, I have to write about other stuff. And this combines with your personal investments. So the problem is that I've made, and I'm probably still making, every investment mistake in the books. My psychology-wise, I'm just not an investor. I have to realize that, and especially as a journalist. So it goes up, and then you write about it, and then you get FOMO, and you want to get in, and then you buy it at the top, And I did that. I bought it, I think, €750. I bought half a Bitcoin, right? At Bitcoin.de. Back in the day, you had to, it was just a marketplace that got people together, and then I had to wire that person money, and Bitcoin.de would work as an escrow, right? And of course, before I was even finished with the transaction, the price collapsed 50%. And I'm like, Niko, this is stupid. And then you want to forget about it. And you still see this in the media. You still see articles that are not written for the public. They're written for the person writing the articles. And I was like that. And I even wrote, within these years, I will have written about 1 to 1.5 articles why Bitcoin is stupid as well, right? And then, because I was so far down the gold rabbit hole that I was also down the gold rabbit hole in a professional capacity. I was so convinced that, you know, inflation will run hot and everybody will buy gold, that I just wanted to be known as the gold guy. I wanted, because I didn't have any money anyway, right, as a young journalist. So I just thought that's a good career.
So before you
move,
had
right?
the white paper as a poster at home, you had Peter Schiff hung up as like your morning ritual place.
So I want to say, but I said this before about Peter Schiff. I'm sure Peter Schiff understands Bitcoin. His son understands Bitcoin. He's just doing great marketing. This is just marketing. He's very good at it. He's marketing his gold company, while his son is covering the Bitcoiners. And whatever happens, the Schiffs win. So good for them. But no, I mean, I think that the whole discussion between Bitcoin and gold is a bit stupid. There wouldn't be Bitcoin if there wasn't any gold.
Yep.
Literally, like I think you need gold for miners as well.
We can go down this rabbit hole if you want. We can just keep talking about that and gold.
But I'm just gonna finish up the like my timeline here. And so I would cover it on and off, and then I would forget about it, and I would not take it seriously. And that's the thing. I mean, that's the main thing for me was I would not take it seriously, because I knew, like, for the same reason why Ray Dalio says these things, right? I thought that the government will never let it happen, right? And that they would go down the gold route, because gold is something they can control, because they have so much of it. And then I would lose interest. And then in 2017, I remember this very, very vividly. I was about 33, 34, and my brother was 4 years younger, and I would get text messages from his friends, who are also my friends, but they're like 30, right? And they would send me messages, write something about Ethereum, write something about ICOs. And I'm like, this is interesting. That's the first time a young person has ever told me that he wants to read something in my newspaper. So I better get on this, right? So I would spend the whole 17 bull run knee deep in shitcoins, writing about them, speculating with them, burning so much money. I remember, I mean, it's one thing beating yourself up about not buying Bitcoin in 2013. It's another thing about not buying it at least in 17, when it was still like 2,000, 3,000 euros, right? Not even 1,000, but 3,000 is fine, right? Okay. So no, I did not do that. But I had a whole lot of shitcoin, man. And a whole lot of shitcoin narratives. And it's also a typical psychological thing, because you always want to be the smarter guy, right? The guy next to you owns Bitcoin for 10 years. You're not going to buy Bitcoin now. He was right 10 years ago. No, you're going to buy, I don't know, some
the
Cardano
new
or
next
whatever,
thing,
right? Exactly. And then something interesting I also want to mention is that after the bull run of 17, 18, I would during the bull run I would get messages, and after the bull run I would go through these messages, and there was this huge Ponzi scheme running in Austria, Germany, and a couple of other countries, with Austria as a center, right? It was called Optioment. And it was actually built on Bitcoin in so far as that they would take people's money and that they would credit them Bitcoin in their system. They never actually held the Bitcoin. They just took them and basically ran away with them. But for over a year, this was going on, and they were promising 1%, 2%, 4% a week, right? And it was a classic Ponzi scheme. I learned a lot about Ponzi schemes back then. That's why that's something I see a lot in the shitcoin space right now. Like these strategies of always promising, never delivering, you know. I don't know, going to proof of stake and then just locking the stake indefinitely, something like that maybe. And I learned a lot about this, but it also turned me off Bitcoin and crypto for real, because it was absolutely disgusting. They were predators of the worst kind, and they would go after vulnerable communities, you know, and it was really, really disgusting. And I would spend a lot of time, and it makes me laugh about because there are some like wannabe journalists now who consider themselves to be crypto critics and spend their day hating on Bitcoin, right? So I even got like an investigative journalism award for that, right? And it would be very, very negative about Bitcoin. But does anybody care? No. No. So that also turned me off Bitcoin, and then actually it took until 2020, and the then rabbit hole of Bitcoin maxis, and especially that's why I mentioned him so much, because I did listen to a lot of Peter McCormack's podcasts, who I think is doing an excellent job, and this also basically gave me the idea of basically doing the same in German, and within time it gave me the idea within time, but in 16, 17, 18, we didn't have these Bitcoin only sources. Yeah, I don't know when Kiki started to write, but I mean his stuff is absolutely insane. I didn't find it until 2020, so it's just what it is. And then I'm basically taking the template that I thought would be good with gold, where I don't have so much money I can invest in, so I wouldn't. Actually, the most important part of my journey was when I realized I'm not going to get rich off Bitcoin or crypto. When I decided this is not the way. It's not the way to just wait for a number go up and then sell and then I'm rich. And when I'm going to do that, I don't know. You know, it's not the point of life anyway. And that really helped.
I guess there's a very small minority, maybe online Bitcoin Twitter or generally in the community, that might judge you if you like, I don't know, you know, sell your Bitcoin and stuff, but they're anyway too small to really pay too much attention to. But my experience was quite similar to yours. Because I had a phase in my Bitcoin journey. So I got in 2013, and I immediately got in because I needed to pay a friend in South Africa. And I looked online, I was like, Western Union is way too expensive. PayPal is always this, you know, this was back in the days, like you had to link your bank account in a certain way. And then because I was based in Switzerland, I had to do some things extra and super annoying. And I used it for about 3 years as a payment source. And then in the middle, I got this weird thing as well with the ICOs, because I started freelancing back then. You know, you get these amazing, I don't know, 10,000 tokens if you work for us, right? And then if we go live at the ICO, you'll be rich and shit. And you believe that because obviously you see 10,000 as a token sum, not realizing that one token is like 0.00001p. So basically nothing. And I think everyone has to go through that journey, whether that be getting burned. You mentioned the Ponzi scheme in Austria. I had friends who were in this one. Then there was another one called OneCoin, which you probably know as well.
Yeah, sure. They also had an office.
Oh, really?
In Vienna. I remember. I actually, a friend of mine was running a magazine, and they had the office just above OneCoin.
Oh shit!
Right?
So he might have seen. You might have missed some insights.
The crypto queen. I might be the crypto queen. You don't never know. You never know.
Yeah, there's a great BBC podcast about her. One of the few BBC shows that is good, actually. But yeah, I had friends in one Ponzi scheme, in OneCoin, and then in a third one. And at one point, they were just like, you know, you can talk to me so much about this ICO, that Bitcoin. It's just, it doesn't make sense anymore. But they also, funnily enough, got it in 2020. So I think that pain always is the first thing you have to get in contact with to get some points of Bitcoin, whether that be macroeconomics, monetary policy, whatever, or just the number who goes up less quicker than others?
It's just, I see it as a privilege to be working in this environment and to spend my time with it. It's it's. I mean, if you look at Bitcoin in a long enough timeline, if it works out the way we think it will, anybody who is still, I mean, we can tell our grandchildren that we bought Bitcoin. You don't buy Bitcoin, you work for it, right? It's money. You don't buy money, right? That's why it's also not an investment. And that's why the investment types always get their heads screwed the wrong way. So you don't buy Bitcoin, and it's not about selling it anymore. And once you start, I mean, I don't even care about the tax regime anymore, because I'm not going to sell it. If I need money, I work for the money. I earn euros. It's fine. I mean, yes, they lose their value, but that's how it works, right?
Yeah, and if you need to sell it once, okay, you like bite the sour apple and you move on. You know, you get the chance to buy it back sooner rather than later.
That's also right. I mean, I've sold a lot.
Same.
I've sold a lot because, but for speculation and for emotions reasons, right? And I've always sold at a loss.
I think most have.
Yeah.
but it's the best way. It's the best way to avoid taxes. If you never make any gains, you don't pay any taxes. But the thing is with also what you said, because if you got into Bitcoin using it. Yael, my friend who I'm doing the newsletter with, is also one of those people. If you get into Bitcoin using it, like the Nigerians are doing or the Lebanese are doing, it's a whole different story than speculating on the price, because that's how most people in the West would get in, right? So you already used it. So I totally understand where it comes from with many Bitcoiners, especially old Bitcoiners, who always ask, can I pay in Bitcoin? Do you accept Bitcoin? You want to use it. Using Bitcoin is so much more fun than just waiting for the number to go up in some currency. And that's also, I mean, from a media perspective. I mean, if I look in YouTube, right? If I want clicks, I just do some chart shit every day, right? I just see, look, I can see some chart constellation here and there. But it's also good for, let's say, the Bitcoin story, or even like the Bitcoin revolution, that all the really greedy people will go to the crypto bullshit, right? And they will advertise FTX, and then FTX goes down, and they'll make a video saying, I never told you FTX was good, right? And then they just gaslight their audience and then just move on, right? And from a nihilistic perspective, you can say, okay, they're making so much money, and the money just proves that they are right. But it's not something I'm interested in. And I get when you start to understand Bitcoin, you also understand that the whole investing, like media and the whole investing story, it's all built on the problems of fiat money. It's not built. I mean, sure, you can buy a stock. I love stocks. Stocks are great, right? Everybody should own stocks, but the whole, like, making it into a nationwide pastime is a function of inflation, not of anything else. There's a reason why Jack Bogle invented the index fund in 1976. And there's a reason why this exploded in the last couple of decades, and this was not necessary before. I mean, here in Austria, most people are still, waiting for things to change, and nobody buys fucking stocks.
I just wanted to add that, because I have a very good friend who works at a hedge fund here in London, and he, we always keep talking, because he's interested in Bitcoin, obviously from an investment perspective. And I mean, typical Keynesian money economics, it's good that, like, our money is stable if it keeps inflating away 2% every year, which I think just if you say it doesn't make sense, right? Like, it loses value, but it's stable. And I talked to him, I was like, listen, what would someone need to do if they're interested? Like, they study economics, maybe they get a master's degree in whatever, international law, additionally to, like, the economics thing in a bachelor's, and they want to get into a hedge fund. Maybe they're good with math, maybe they can sell, whatever. What do you actually give up? And his answer is always the same. Like, I give up my life. Like, I have no private life. I have no interests, essentially. I'm at the whim of my clients. They're a very good performing hedge fund. They did very well last year, for example. But then at the end of the day, I look at this and I think to myself, holy shit, is this how you like want to live for the next 40 years, you know? And he maybe has a bit less. He has like 35 left until he's in that retirement age. But if you compare this to what the possibilities are, just like in the Bitcoin landscape, let's take mining, for example. It doesn't even have to be all of Bitcoin. You can spend your whole life probably bouncing between different mining providers, solutions, whatever. And you can pretty much be relaxed in a certain environment. Mining can be stressful as well with all of the price fluctuation and stuff. But you can dedicate your life to something. If you actually see through this, you sort of sit there and going like, well, is there anything else you really want to do? And I think if you get to that point, that's when you, in my eyes, are like a proper Bitcoin maxi, Bitcoin enthusiast, whatever you want to call it. Because everything else before that is partially driven probably by like speculation and trying to get some bucks out of it.
I mean, moving money around is not a job, right? I mean, it's of course, I mean, the hedge fund guy lives pretty well off it. He also doesn't have time to spend the money, I guess.
Or maybe on bad stuff, which I'm not going to mention for his own sake.
That's what he needs Bitcoin for, right? But it's. I mean, when you look at this historically, Wall Street's hedge funds, like money managers, from the 20s to the 70s. It's a boring as fuck job. It's people like in the bonds department of banks. That's not that. This all started with the great inflation, starting with the end of the gold standard. And we can talk about if this is a good or a bad thing, but it's just the fact. It all started with the great basically deregulation, and that is actually what it is. It's a deregulation, which is a good thing actually. So I'm not saying we should go back to a gold standard, but suddenly banks, you know, dominate the skylines of cities. Every important institution is a bank, you know. If you want to make a lot of money, you go to the banks. Why? Because that's where the money goes first, and then they take their cut and then give the rest to the people. You know, there's this saying on Wall Street is saying, where's the client's private plane? Where's the client's yacht, right? And of course these things go wrong very, very badly. And we've seen this in the financial crisis and later on. But people, I mean, it's not their fault. It's just the incentive. Most people will not understand this. The only reason why we understand this in the first place is because we have the internet. Without the internet and the connection of minds that happened in the last 20 years, we wouldn't have known this. You know, a couple of academics would, you know, dust off some old Hayek book and read it and say, well, he's right. Who are we going to tell? Nobody. You know, the Financial Times is not picking up the phone. And so that's why Bitcoin for me is something far more than just a monetary speculative instrument. It really changes the way you think about, you know, life and time and work, and it goes back to something of, let's call it a simpler. It frees you up because you know you don't have to worry about the money anymore. And of course this sounds insane for anybody who is in a fiat mindset, right? Yeah. Because they would worry about the fluctuation, so volatile. But you don't, because I know when I get Bitcoin, it's a part of whatever there is of 21 million max. If you even count the 1 million the Satoshi coins, right? But it's so you have these but you need to spend so much time on this, and you need to spend so much time understanding this, that of course it's not a mass phenomenon right now. This will take a lot of time, but I think that we have reached a point where people who are interested in it see Bitcoiners, and they see the community, they see the optimism, they see that people are very relaxed, and this attracts people because this is what they don't see in the normal world, right? That's one thing, and the second thing is that more and more, because in order to understand, like to even get into something like Bitcoin, you need to question the system, right? You need to have some sort of doubt in the system. Do you doubt that the banks are going to work forever? Do you have doubt in your government's ability to manage the pandemic? Whatever. But if you are part of the elite, if you already made it, if you own everything, and if everybody tells you you're great, and if life is good within like it is, you're not gonna get into Bitcoin, right? But if you think that, central banking is a rather stupid idea, you're gonna get into Bitcoin at some point.
And what I love, before I leave the question then to Ian, if I speak to because I also have a lot of journalist friends. Niko, I didn't mention it in the pre-interview. I studied media studies, like Medienwissenschaften. Wanted to become a journalist. Initially sports journalism, then I got hooked on like consumer tech and stuff. But at one point I was too bored and basically, instead of working for a newspaper, worked for a think tank and realized, okay, it's more or less the same shit depending what you do. I then left it completely to just do freelance copy work. But a lot of my friends are still in it. And it's amazing to me sometimes if they ask me, but what's the use case of Bitcoin? Like, we in the West don't need it. And I'm like, yeah, we don't. But think about the other, like, 4.5, 5, probably 6 billion people on Earth who are, not all of them are unbanked, but pretty badly banked cash societies, like you had your talk with Mary. These people need a monetary system, decentralized, no one in control, and everyone has the same properties, possibilities on it. And you can send it around the world instantly now with solutions like Lightning and stuff. How you can look at this as a Western perspective and actually be quite arrogant to think that we don't need this in the world. This is what I sometimes struggle with. But again, you described it perfectly before. It's the fiat mindset.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question with the fiat mindset. How dangerous are journalists with the fiat mindset that don't fully understand Bitcoin, and they've got quite a dominant voice out there in the legacy mainstream media? Dishing out a recycled FUD that's been repeated again and again and again, and cutting and pasting their articles about, energy and environmentalism. We've got these people out there who are reading this material and believing it. So how can we counter the FUD and how can we better educate journalists?
So I want to start off by saying that if you look at what's happening, for example, in Africa or in the Middle East, it's not, everybody agrees that these countries do not have functioning currency and financial systems, right? But if it doesn't have to get to this point. There are still corrupt elites, and we have corrupt elites. Everybody has corrupt elites, right? But they're just
in
worse.
Lebanon, in your interview, sorry to interrupt you, like the central bank was literally running a Ponzi scheme. Quite literally, right? It's not like a conspiracy theory, whatever. Macron approved it.
Let's just say they were running a Ponzi scheme that was so bad that even like high officials have to admit that. But I'm just saying that for example, we talk a lot about migration, right? We talk a lot about Africa. We talk a lot about the demographies there. If you give people a functioning monetary system, if you give them something that they can base their life off, then you don't have to migrate to Europe. It's just our system works a little bit better. That's why we get to be arrogant about they don't know how to run their country. Not even counting the fact that our companies are still basically squeezing every penny out of these countries. Okay, but that's just I would just want to say that the whole idea of putting the whole world on a hard money standard that actually works is so big and so mind-boggling that I will gladly debate anybody, and that's how we get to the journalists. I will gladly debate anybody who disagrees with this until they just drop down in exhaustion. And with the journalists, I get this question a lot. I really do, because people are fascinated by what's going on in media. And in the end, it's the same thing as in central banks. It's incentives. So people do not have a strong incentive of going against the mainstream, right? When you look closely, every paper will have like one or two guys who cover that base, right? You have your Jeremy Clarkson, right? Whenever you go too far to the left, you let Jeremy loose, and he tweets something, and then it's fine again, right? Or you have other people, and But in the end, journalists are there's this book from a German journalist, Jan Fleischhauer, who is also more on the conservative, maybe liberal side, liberal in the German sense, libertarian probably. And he would say, the thing is that if you are somebody who leans to the left of the political spectrum, you will be somebody who likes to tell other people what to think and what to do. That's just how you think that the world should be run. And then you will automatically go into professions like university, schools, and journalism. Right? So first of all newsrooms in the West are already skewed in one direction. You see this in elections. You see this with their how do you say, like the unions, right? And you also see, if you are a hardcore libertarian, what are you going to write? What are you going to write in your op-ed? Just leave it to the market. You have to fill the rest of the page. You have to say something, do something. And the whole system is built like this. Even in my old think tank that was very libertarian, in the what should the government do section, it's all about what the government does, right? Because that's just how this works. Back in the days of the Austrians, economists were people who told politicians what they cannot do. You cannot do this. Now economists tell politicians what they can do. Just put money here, put money there. So, and that's the journalism thing. I don't think that there's any, some are total idiots. I can tell you that. This is like in any profession, there are some total morons who just think, there are some people in the journalism, like I said, there are some people who are going to want to make their career out of busting Bitcoin.
You mean these are individuals who are at conferences and every second work is or are those a bit different people?
No, I would not.
Okay, good.
No. She's no. She's not like that. She just. I think she understands. I don't know. I haven't talked to her that much, but I don't think that she's like that. I have a couple of people in my head from the German-speaking world who would be more like that, and there is a whole section of anti-crypto people. Oh,
I know which one to think of, probably.
Yeah, but I don't want to name any names. That's not why I'm here. But it's so they will think that they are going to be anti-Bitcoin, and then they have their all anti-crypto circle jerk on Twitter with other people, and they all of them go the easy route by never acknowledging the difference between Bitcoin and the rest of crypto.
Yep.
That's what they do. They take it all in, and I can see why they see this, but I always say, and this also goes for the central banks, and this is also the journalism, if you are used to cover the European Central Bank and they tell you what to think, and then they write articles about that Bitcoin is total shit, well, you're gonna be very impressed by that, right? But there is one thing I can guarantee you that's already happening, and that will impress journalists. They get backlash, and they get a lot of backlash, because when I would write shit about crypto and Bitcoin in 2016, 17, if there was mistakes in there, I would not get so much backlash because there wasn't so many people. Today, if the European Central Bank does one tweet about Bitcoin, there will be hundreds of Bitcoiners. Actually, when the European Central Bank does any tweet these days, there's hundreds of Bitcoiners in the comment section, trolling them.
Present company included.
And so there is, so you get lots of feedback now. And that will make you think. But in the end, the only way to get journalists to understand Bitcoin is to get them to use it, right? Because anybody who's never bought and sent any Bitcoin on the main chain, on the Lightning Network, is like a journalist writing about a car that he has never driven, or a journalist writing about the internet without owning his own email address, right? And then of course they will say, yeah, but it's an investment, and I'm a journalist, so I'm not invested in what I write about. Yeah, but it's not an investment; it's a technology, The fact that it has also an investing character is a feature of the technology that makes it work. It's not what it's there for in the first place. If you think Bitcoin is only there for you to make money, then of course, yeah, you're gonna have a framework that's gonna be very hard to understand. And yes, writing about Bitcoin only in the financial pages is probably wrong. You should be writing about it but in the end, my personal opinion is it's not. I mean, these media companies are dying anyway. There's nothing to do with Bitcoin. They would be gone without Bitcoin, and it's a big chance for us to rebuild, because you need to. Because you said Joel, you said that you could go into mining. I think you can go into any business with a Bitcoin angle these days. It doesn't have to. Mining is just so. Media is my personal preference, and it's very close to. People need information, so it really works. But I'm probably not going to be talking about Bitcoin so much in 20 years. I will be talking about the world from a Bitcoin perspective, right? And I already do that today a little bit, because that's what people are looking for. They are looking to understand. And if you get this perspective, it's easier for you to understand, because you finally have something that is constant.
You're already answering my next question, and that was where you're going to see yourself in 10 years. And it seems like, we need to understand in 10 years from a different perspective. Everything's going to be more Bitcoin orientated. So how do you see your work shifting in 10 years' time as Bitcoin evolves?
It's really hard to say, because we have no idea where the technology goes in 10 years. Right now, I'm extremely fascinated by whatever, so I have to admit that, I told you about Yael a couple of times. So one thing that he does very well is he's also a journalist, but he's very much into the technical stuff of Bitcoin. He's the one covering Nostr and the Lightning Network, and he has a miner at home and running
it's
several
like the
nodes.
Between me and you, Joel.
Right? And I like all of this, absolutely, but it's not my comfort zone, I like, because when I have time to go into technical stuff, I'm looking at cameras, I'm looking at microphones, I'm more like a gaming streamer, right? But that's fine. But so yeah, I see myself probably in a very, very similar situation to right now, but a little bit more streamlined, because I don't know where this is going. One thing right now that I want to keep is like this one person show, basically. I don't necessarily want to build a business and have employees and stuff, that's not, but on the other hand, I know that you need to get some leverage from your work somewhere, so I have to think about this. But right now, I'm very much enjoying doing this on my own with partners, with corporation partners. I'm not lonely or anything. But I'm happy if I get to do this in some capacity. But it's hard to say. Something else could come up, something completely different could come up. But I will probably still be in the so-called Bitcoin space. I don't know if we're gonna call it Bitcoin space then, but it's yeah. But I mean, honestly, I've written newspapers for my parents when I was 8, so I will always be a journalist. I will always, even if I'm an entrepreneur, even if I do something else, I will always be a journalist, because it's a great job to, like, a great mindset to have for these times, because it's lifelong learning for us is not just a meme.
That's a good quote. That would be a good clip on social media. Niko, it was wonderful having you on. And before we end things, I want to give you the chance to ask if we have forgotten anything you'd like to mention, and please tell us where people can find you online.
So first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for listening to me brabble here. I enjoy this very much. I don't think if we have forgotten anything, it's just, we're both in the content game, so we can just do another episode. We don't have to do this now. And where can people reach me? I think the best way to find me for your audience would just be to go to fixthemoney.net, which is my English home base, basically. And there will be links to all my social media stuff, and of course YouTube. I'm going to launch the YouTube channel probably soonish. But there's 10 episodes of the podcast already up. We have a couple of dozens of articles where I write about my perspective, where I also tie it into my experiences as a journalist, even like the gold stuff and other stuff. So this is a lot of fun, and I would love to have your listeners as my readers/listeners as well. You can subscribe; it's free for now. We'll see about that, but it's free, it's a lot of fun doing that. And thank you for having me. I wish you the best for your show.
Thank you. And on that note, you reminded me, please also like and subscribe, guys, on YouTube and all of that stuff. You mentioned it before, Niko. Use the Lightning Network with value for value. I don't want to force anyone to spend their sats if they don't want to, but it's really a great tool to, if you've never tried it, also use it once. Because you see it on Nostr, right? It gets addictive if you get saps. You want to do more of that stuff.
Absolutely. Nostr is great. I don't have time for Nostr, but besides that, it's because I actually, so the only reason why I can be as productive as I am right now is because I deleted Twitter from my cell phone. So but now I have the Nostr.
So you just replaced Twitter in the form.
It's just
great.
Yeah. Niko, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you again. And maybe we can do another episode down the line and reconnect and see what we're doing a few years down the line, perhaps. But take care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.